Welcome to this segment from the Europe's Innovation Gap: Why the EU Trails the US and East Asia in Tech series. To make this deep dive more accessible, I've broken the full video into smaller, focused chapters. If you're interested in the full story, from overregulation to the rise of unicorn startups, you can find the complete video on my channel. Today, we are talking about Chapter 6, Bridging the Gap: How Europe Can Revive Innovation. In this final chapter, we'll talk about what Europe can do to close the innovation gap and reclaim its place as a global tech leader.
Conclusion: Bridging the Gap: How Europe Can Revive Innovation.
Europe may be down in this race, but it is not out. This situation is not inevitable. The causes are clearly identified, and they can be addressed. In fact, leaders from economists to former officials like Mario Draghi have warned that the political cost of inaction is now greater than the cost of bold change. There is a historic opportunity for Europe to reinvent itself as an innovation leader in the 21st century. So, how to do it? Here are some actionable recommendations drawn from experts and reports, forming a blueprint for Europe's tech resurgence. 1. Adopt an innovation principle in regulation. Balance the precautionary principle with an innovation principle that asks, how can we enable innovation safely? Rather than, how can we eliminate all risk? This means smarter regulation. Involving innovators early, implementing sandboxes, trial zones, for new tech, as done in fintech, and ensuring regulations adapt as tech evolves. For example, instead of blanket bans, set flexible standards and update them as we learn more. Some EU lawmakers have proposed formally integrating an innovation test for new laws. The goal is to preserve European values, privacy, safety, without unduly hampering competitiveness. GDPR could be refined, for example, simpler rules for startups or research uses of data, and the AI Act calibrated so it doesn't impose impractical burdens that US-Chinese firms won't face. Essentially, regulate with a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Protect society and give innovators room to breathe. 2. Streamline funding and bureaucracy. The EU should reform its R&D funding mechanisms to be faster and less bureaucratic. This might mean more mission-driven programs with clear goals, like the EU's new missions on climate, cancer, etc., which can focus resources on big challenges and rally public-private collaboration. Increasing the share of EU-level R&D funding beyond the current 10% so that more research is coordinated and scaled continent-wide rather than fragmented. Simplifying grant applications and reporting requirements. Maybe adopting a fast grant model for small projects and reserving detailed scrutiny for large ones. Encouraging experimentation in funding. For example, use prizes like X-Prize-style competitions to reward breakthroughs, which can sometimes spur innovation more effectively than pre-planned projects. Expanding tax incentives for private R&D. Many countries have R&D tax credit schemes. Ensuring these are generous and easy to use can coax companies to invest more of their own money in research. 3. Supercharge venture capital and startup growth. Europe needs to nurture a homegrown venture ecosystem that can rival the US. Some steps. Scale up venture funds. Perhaps create a European fund of funds that channels billions into private VC funds on the condition they invest in European startups. The European Investment Fund already does this to a degree. It can be expanded. Attract private investors. Encourage pension funds and insurance companies sitting on trillions of euros to allocate a small percentage to venture capital. Slight tweaks in regulations can make this more appealing, improving the capital supply to VC. Integrated capital markets. Complete the EU's Capital Markets Union to make it easier to raise money across borders. Also, develop a vibrant European stock market for tech, perhaps by promoting pan-European indices or easing listing requirements, so startups have a reason to IPO at home rather than on Nasdaq. Retain and recycle talent. Provide incentives for successful European founders to stay and reinvest in Europe through tax breaks or recognition. Often, after a big exit, founders move to the US or invest elsewhere. Capturing their expertise for the next generation in Europe is key. Government co-investment and guarantees. For later stage funding, where Europe really lags, governments could offer co-investment or guarantees to de-risk large growth stage investments in strategic tech companies. This might entice more private capital into those Series C/D rounds. Attract foreign VC to Europe. Interestingly, one way is just to market European innovation better. Many US VCs are now more interested in Europe because valuations are lower than Silicon Valley. The EU and national agencies can facilitate connections, maybe via events or platforms showcasing Europe's best startups. 4. Create a single European innovation market, the fifth freedom. As recommended in the Letter Report and others, enable the free flow of knowledge and innovators across Europe. This means breaking down remaining national barriers. Harmonise regulations for startups and digital services even more, so entering another EU country is truly as easy as operating at home. Standardise patent and IP processes. Europe has taken steps with a unitary patent recently. Push that through. Make it easier for a researcher or employee to move with their pension, stock options, etc. from one country to another. Essentially make talent flow seamless. Invest in Europe-wide tech clusters. For example, an EU Silicon Valley isn't realistic as one place. But networks of specialized clusters. AI in Montreal. Oops, not Montreal. AI in Munich. FinTech in Amsterdam, etc. That collaborate and share resources could act as a unified innovation geography. Possibly establish transnational innovation zones with special regulations, like easier hiring/firing or one-stop regulatory approval for new tech, that multiple countries join. A sandbox at the EU level. In short, treat the whole EU as a single market for startups, not 27 small ones. That will give European companies the scale at home to compete globally. A single European innovation market and not 27 national markets should be the mantra. 5. Cultural shift and education. This one is harder to legislate, but over time, Europe should. Celebrate entrepreneurship and tolerate failure. Public campaigns and education can encourage a mindset that starting a company is as admirable as other careers. Some countries have started doing entrepreneurial education in schools. Reform bankruptcy and employment laws in a sensible way. For example, allow quicker second chances for failed businesses, so entrepreneurs aren't tied up in legal limbo or debt for life. Perhaps have a special regime for startups under a certain age that makes it easier to wind down and try again. Improve tech transfer from universities. Encourage professors and students to patent and start businesses, perhaps by giving universities equity stakes or easing rules on professors taking sabbaticals to do startups, etc. Successful models like MIT's Tech Transfer Office or Stanford's Culture could be adapted. Focus on skills for the future. Invest in training programs for AI, coding, biotech, etc., so that companies don't leave due to talent shortages. The EU's new focus on digital skills is a step in the right direction. Attract global talent. Make visas for skilled workers and entrepreneurs even easier. Some countries have startup visas. Expand those EU-wide. The UK's tech sector benefited from being open to global talent until Brexit complicated things. The EU can capitalise by welcoming those who might otherwise go to Silicon Valley. A European tech visa that fast-tracks permits for STEM graduates or experienced tech professionals would help. Promote success stories. European media and governments can highlight homegrown tech successes more to build a narrative that Europe can produce world beaters. Heroes matter. Success breeds ambition in others. 6. Strategic investment and sovereignty. Europe has identified certain key areas where it wants to catch up. Semiconductors, AI, batteries, etc. The EU is launching programs like the EU Chips Act, with investments to build chip fabs in Europe and battery alliances, etc. These should be pursued aggressively. Basically, don't shy away from industrial policy where needed. The US is doing it. Chips Act, Inflation Reduction Act for green tech. And China has done it all along. Europe can use its market power to incentivize innovation at home, for example, requiring local content for government procurement in key tech, funding public-private partnerships for chip R&D, etc. While avoiding heavy-handed protectionism, a dose of tech sovereignty strategy is warranted so Europe isn't entirely dependent on foreign tech. For instance, supporting a European cloud infrastructure, Gaia X initiative, or open-source alternatives can spark homegrown innovation. 7. Leverage European strengths. Finally, Europe should double down on areas where it has an edge as a unique selling point for innovation. Regulate in a pro-innovation way globally. If Europe can craft smart regulations, it can actually export them, as GDPR did for privacy. Being the standard setter can give European firms an advantage in compliance and trust. For example, Europe's emphasis on ethical AI could be turned into a competitive advantage if done right. European AI solutions might become globally trusted. Public trust and social stability. European societies, by valuing social welfare, can ensure that innovation benefits people broadly through healthcare, education. If Europe can show that innovation and equality can go hand in hand, it could create a more sustainable model of tech growth, as opposed to the backlash we see elsewhere with big tech and inequality. A population that trusts that innovation won't leave them behind is more likely to embrace new tech. Pan-European projects. Revive the spirit of ambitious collaborations like Airbus or CERN for new fields. For example, a Euro DARPA that funds high-risk, high-reward tech missions. There is now the EIC Pathfinder and a new European Innovation Council akin to that. Ensure it's well-funded and independent. Perhaps a European moonshot, like being first to commercialize fusion energy or to build quantum internet, something that captures imagination and unites efforts. In essence, Europe needs to become a place where entrepreneurs, researchers, and investors feel empowered and excited to break new ground, rather than cautious or constrained. That means loosening some controls, speeding up processes, and embracing a bit more risk, while still upholding the fundamental European values that define the EU's approach to technology: human-centric, inclusive, sustainable. The challenge is significant, but not insurmountable. Remember, Europe was once the world leader in innovation. From the scientific revolution through the second industrial revolution, Europeans paved the way. The talent and creativity are still here. As one optimistic analysis stated, quote, "This situation is not inevitable. The causes are identified and can be addressed. There is a historic opportunity to return to the forefront of innovation." Close quote. The next decade will be crucial. If the EU can enact reforms and truly foster a single, dynamic innovation market, we might see the next Google or Tencent emerge from Berlin or Barcelona. If not, Europe risks remaining a consumer and regulator of others' innovations rather than a creator of its own. The stakes are high. It's about economic prosperity, but also about having a say in the technologies that shape our future, from AI ethics to biotech. A Europe that innovates will be able to project its values globally through technology. A Europe that falls behind will have to accept others' tech and terms. Final thought, Europe's story has always been one of renaissance, periods of awakening and creativity following times of challenge. By recognizing the need for change and boldly implementing it, the EU can spark a new renaissance in innovation. The race isn't over, and Europe has unique strengths in its diverse people and stable societies. By unshackling its innovators while keeping its humanity, Europe just might surprise the world, and itself, and transform from a laggard to a leader in the global tech arena. Let's hope in a few years we'll be talking about how Europe caught up in the innovation race, not still asking why it hasn't. The blueprint is there. Now it's time to build. If you found this chapter interesting, consider watching the full deep dive, where I cover everything from Europe's startup gap to case studies comparing the EU, US, and Asia. You'll find the link in the description. And hey, if you like this kind of content, smash that like button, subscribe for more deep dives, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Cheers, and see you in the next one.